All right, everyone, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into a topic that's often considered taboo. But let's be real, it's something we all think about, right? We're talking about sex education.
Yes, definitely a topic that needs way more open discussion.
And for this deep dive, we're pulling insights from a podcast episode called Beyond the Mic, Real Talk on Sex Education. And honestly, I learned so much.
Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening, right? Like, you think you know stuff, but then they drop this stat that over 80% of sexual assaults happen between people who already know each other.
Whoa, that's a scary thought.
It is, and it really highlights how important it is to understand consent, even with people you're close to.
That's a good point, because we often think of those situations as safe. But clearly, that's not always the case.
Exactly, and that's where comprehensive sex education comes in. It's not just about knowing the biology, it's about giving you the tools to navigate relationships safely and respectfully.
Which Beyond the Mic really emphasizes.
Yeah, they break down consent in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. It's not just about the absence of a no, it's about a clear and enthusiastic yes.
Right, it's about actively seeking consent, not just assuming it.
And what's really important is that consent is ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. You can change your mind at any point, and that should always be respected.
I think that's something that can be hard to grasp, especially when you're young and inexperienced.
I agree. I remember being in college, and honestly, consent was just a box to be checked. It wasn't discussed in the nuanced way that this podcast episode does.
You know, I had a similar experience. Like, we were told to get consent, but no one really explained what that meant in practice.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of confusion and misunderstandings can arise. It's about shifting from passive acceptance to active, enthusiastic participation.
Which makes a huge difference in terms of feeling safe and respected.
Absolutely. And speaking of safety, Beyond the Mic also goes beyond the basics when it comes to safe sex.
Yeah, they talk about more than just condoms and birth control.
Right. They emphasize the importance of open communication with your partner about STDs and getting tested regularly, which, let's be honest, can be a bit awkward to bring up.
Totally. I think there's still a lot of stigma around talking about STDs.
For sure. But the more open we are about it, the safer everyone will be.
And it's not just about physical safety, is it?
No, emotional safety is just as important.
Beyond the Mic really drove that point home.
They stress that you should never feel pressured to do anything you're not comfortable with, both physically and emotionally.
And it's okay to say no if you're not feeling it emotionally, even if you're physically ready.
Exactly. It's about being honest with yourself about your own emotional state and what you feel ready for.
And that's a message that I think a lot of people, especially young people, need to hear.
For sure. We often focus on the physical aspects of safety, but emotional safety is just as crucial.
And it can be tricky because it involves understanding your own boundaries and being assertive about them.
It's a process, but it's so worth it.
You know, this whole discussion about emotional safety got me thinking about how sometimes, even when you're physically safe, a situation can still feel emotionally violating if your boundaries aren't respected.
That's a really insightful point.
It's like, even if nothing bad happened physically, it can still be a really negative experience if you feel pressured or coerced.
Which is why open communication and a deeper understanding of consent are so vital.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's not just about the physical act. It's about respecting each other's boundaries and feelings.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels comfortable and safe.
Which brings us to another topic that Beyond the Mic explores understanding your own sexuality.
Yeah, this is something that can be really personal and sometimes even challenging to figure out.
Definitely. And the episode acknowledges that there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to sexuality.
Right. People identify in so many different ways, and it's okay to be questioning or still figuring things out.
It's a journey, not a destination.
And the episode talks about how societal pressures and family acceptance can make this journey even harder.
Especially for young people who are already dealing with so much.
But the message is clear. Your feelings are valid, no matter what.
Regardless of what society or your family might expect.
You don't have to fit into any mold or meet anyone else's expectations.
It's about embracing your authentic self and finding your own truth.
Which can take time and courage.
And support. It's important to surround yourself with people who accept and love you for who you are.
And to remember that you're not alone in this journey.
There are so many people out there who have gone through similar experiences and can offer guidance and understanding.
And resources too, right? Like there are websites, hotlines, support groups, all sorts of places to turn to for help.
Exactly. You don't have to figure this out all by yourself.
You know, this whole conversation about sexuality really highlights how much societal norms can impact our understanding of ourselves and our relationships.
And Beyond the Mic doesn't shy away from that.
No, they talk about how those norms can sometimes be harmful and lead to feelings of shame or guilt.
Which is so unnecessary.
Like we should be celebrating our differences and embracing the full spectrum of human sexuality.
It's about reclaiming our power and removing the stigma that's been attached to sex for far too long.
And that's where comprehensive sex education can really make a difference.
It can provide a foundation of knowledge and understanding that allows us to navigate these complex issues with more confidence and clarity.
I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to unpack.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of this multifaceted topic. So, we've been talking a lot about personal empowerment through sex ed.
Yeah, like how it can help us make better choices in our own lives.
Right, but Beyond the Mic also makes this really interesting point about how it's not just an individual thing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's like they argue that good sex education actually benefits society as a whole.
That makes sense. But how so?
Well, they say that when people are informed and empowered to make responsible choices about their sexual health and relationships, it creates this ripple effect.
Oh, I see. Like it impacts their families, their friendships, their workplaces, everything.
Exactly. It's like investing in a healthier future for everyone.
That's a really cool way to look at it.
And another thing they brought up that I thought was important is that sex education isn't just for young people.
That's so true. It's a lifelong journey of learning and adapting.
Right. Our understanding of ourselves and our relationships changes over time.
And so should our knowledge about sex and intimacy.
Exactly. You could be in a committed relationship for years and still encounter new situations or questions.
Or even if you're single and navigating the world of online dating, there's always something new to learn.
The point is, there's always room for growth and learning, regardless of your age or relationship status.
And let's be real. A lot of what we were taught about sex and relationships growing up was either incomplete or just plain wrong.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to keep an open mind and be willing to challenge those old-fashioned ideas.
Which leads me to something that I think often gets overlooked in these conversations, the role of pleasure in sex education.
Ooh, that's a good one. Beyond the Mic touches on this a bit, and I agree it's super important.
Because historically, so much of the focus has been on the dangers and risks associated with sex.
Especially for women, right?
Yeah, the messages are often about avoiding pregnancy or STDs or protecting your reputation.
It's almost like pleasure was an afterthought or something to be ashamed of.
And that can have real consequences for people's sexual well-being and relationships.
Absolutely. If you're not taught that pleasure is a natural and healthy part of sex, it can lead to guilt, shame, and even anxiety.
And it can create this disconnect between your body and your mind.
Making it harder to enjoy sex and intimacy.
Which is why it's crucial to talk about pleasure in a positive and affirming way.
To teach people how to communicate their needs and desires.
And to explore what feels good for them.
And to understand that everyone experiences pleasure differently.
It's about embracing the whole spectrum of human sexuality, not just the parts that society deems acceptable.
Right. And speaking of societal norms, the way we talk about sex often reinforces harmful gender stereotypes.
Beyond the Mic talks about this too.
There's this tendency to frame sex as something that men want and women give.
Which puts pressure on men to always be assertive and in the mood.
And pressures women to be passive and accommodating.
These stereotypes not only limit our understanding of healthy sexuality,
but they can also contribute to unhealthy power dynamics in relationships.
It's like we're setting people up for failure from the start.
We need to dismantle these stereotypes and create a more nuanced understanding of both male and female sexuality.
So much of sex education has been focused on preventing negative outcomes.
Like unwanted pregnancies or STDs.
Then what if we shifted the focus to promoting positive outcomes?
Like healthy communication, mutual respect, and shared pleasure.
That's a really powerful reframing.
Instead of seeing sex education as a burden or a chore,
it becomes an opportunity to enhance your well-being and create more fulfilling relationships.
And listening to Beyond the Mic really made me think about how much I wish I had access to this kind of information when I was younger.
Me too.
Yeah.
We're starting to see some progress in how we talk about sex and relationships.
But there's still a long way to go.
We need to keep pushing for more comprehensive and inclusive sex education.
That addresses the full range of human experience.
Because everyone deserves to have the knowledge and skills they need to make informed choices about their bodies and their lives.
And to experience healthy and fulfilling relationships.
You know, it's been really interesting talking about all these kind of big picture ideas about sex education.
We've covered a lot.
But I'm wondering, what are some practical takeaways that our listeners can actually use in their own lives?
That's a good question.
Like, what's the one thing they should remember after listening to this deep dive?
Well, I think the most important thing is that knowledge is power, right? The more you know about sex, sexuality, and relationships, the better choices you can make for yourself.
So it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff,
No, it's about creating a sex life that feels good and fulfilling.
which might look different for everyone.
Exactly. There's no one right way to do things. What matters is that you feel safe, respected, and empowered.
You know, Beyond the Mic mentioned that sex education is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Yeah, it's not like you learn everything once and you're done.
And I think that can feel overwhelming for some people.
Oh, definitely. Especially if you're trying to unlearn old messages or challenge your beliefs.
So what would you say to someone who's feeling a bit lost or intimidated by all of this?
Well, first of all, be kind to yourself.
That's so important.
It's okay to feel overwhelmed. This isn't about becoming an expert overnight.
It's a process.
Exactly. Take small steps, be curious, and talk to people you trust.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many resources available. Books, websites, therapists, support groups.
You don't have to go through this alone.
Not at all.
Honestly, this whole conversation has been eye-opening, even for me.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I thought I was pretty well informed, but there's always more to learn.
It's a constant evolution.
And I think it's so inspiring to see how much the conversation around sex and sexuality is changing.
It's becoming more open and accepting.
And by talking about these things, we're creating a more informed and empowered society.
I couldn't agree more. It's about breaking down taboos and celebrating our differences.
And ultimately, it's about creating a world where everyone feels safe and respected.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into sex education,
Yeah.
I hope you're leaving with a sense of hope and excitement.
Me too.
We've covered some tough topics,
We have.
but I truly believe that knowledge is power.
And by shining a light on these often silenced conversations,
We can create a brighter future for everyone.
a future where everyone can embrace their sexuality and live a full and fulfilling life.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, this conversation doesn't end here.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep talking about these important issues.
Your journey of self-discovery and sexual empowerment is just beginning.